And so we'd get to these kind of conversations, or would have to resolve an issue, and everyone would speak their part, and then it would get to me and I would just cry.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Open Up Podcast, episode 97, with this woman, this beautiful woman, Hana Tapiata. Hana full stop, but I'm just going to say, I'm going to put it out there, author and blogger with the whakapapa effect, and her new book, Self-Awareness Still Doesn't Begin with Self. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah.
Driving all the way from Inaloo. Have to start with this. What is the reason behind putting this together?
So there's a few layers to the book. So that's the second or revised version of my first book, Self-Awareness Doesn't Begin with Self. And I had been blogging and started to do videos and just wanted to challenge myself. And I knew putting something into print would be a big challenge, because if there's a typo or something wrong with the videos or the blogs, I can just edit it straight away, or I can pull it down.
Yeah.
So I knew that making something permanent, like on paper, would just take it to a whole nother level. And I'm always about trying to see what I'm capable of, and thought this would be a fun little experiment. Yeah. And
I want to talk about this first because I'm nearly finished reading it at the moment. Like I said beforehand, it's one of the first, probably the first book I've read in about 3 years. And me being Māori and having shunned the culture, it's nice for me to hear these stories, myths, legends, whatever you want to call it, and how they tie into all different aspects of life.
yeah.
For me, like, that's one of the most powerful things, that going back through the lineage, the ancestry, they have all these stories to explain these different aspects. How has this been a challenge at all, like bringing this forward to people who aren't quite aware of that sort of lineage?
I try not to focus on that or how other people might struggle or be confronted by it, but I grew up on a diet of myths and legends and stories about atua and stuff, and they were always stories, like something you'd read before you went to bed, and that was kind of it. Or like, did it really happen? Did Tane really separate his parents? And then it wasn't until I started working for my iwi in Rotorua, Te Papatakoro o Te Aroa, where they took the wisdom and the essence of those stories and deciphered them and interpreted them as those learnings that we can apply to our lives.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like that separation story, heaven and earth, the atua like severed their attachment from each other, like their physical attachment, so that they could have the space. And one of the ways I interpret that one is how when we're trying to grow and become this, like become our true selves, we have to like sever who we were, old beliefs, old habits and thoughts, and like it physically hurts.
Yeah.
You know, and that could be one interpretation of that story. And it just makes it make sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I think the reason that I resonate with it so much is because within all of those stories I can see myself, and I'm pretty sure anyone reading it could see themselves in that position as well. Yeah.
And it's like, because there's so many different ways to interpret one story, that at different phases of your own journey you can identify with different parts of it, or with different, not characters, but different people or atua in the story.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm stoked you're putting this sort of work together. It's I'm excited to see where it goes.
Same.
All right, before we get into your story, I just want to ask you one question. Could you please describe the way that you view yourself as a woman and or human?
A learner, I don't know, and I mentioned it the other night. When I was trying to piece together who I was, or this new me, I looked to my name, and knowing that our tupuna were very intentional about the names they gave their descendants. Hana because I didn't know what being hana meant, decided to just go back to its literal meaning, and hana in Māori being like light or to radiate and glow, in Hawaiian to work, and in Japanese, don't have any Japanese whakapapa, but means to blossom and flower. And so I just try to live into that. And with the blog and the book, it's like, I guess, enlightenment in a way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It seems like you are, but are you content with the person that you are at the moment?
Yeah, I love me.
You deserve to be.
I love me, yeah.
Yes, I love that. Let's dive straight into your story. Walk us through it from childhood, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, very lucky to be born into kohanga reo kura kaupapa in Te Aho Matua, full immersion Māori philosophy schooling. And it was just kind of conditioned into us that being Māori was awesome, and if you were Māori you could do anything and everything you wanted to, because the environment that they put in place for us told us that.
Yeah.
And had really positive Māori role models. Life at home was really like full of love and encouragement, and kind of forced to try all different things to figure out which path that we wanted to go on. And Māori dad, Pākehā mum, but she's awesome. She decided to learn Māori, and she got my dad to learn because he wasn't a native speaker. And they gave us that gift and set up that environment for us. And then I just assumed everyone had the same upbringing, and everyone knew that being Māori was awesome and this positive thing to be proud of. And so it was the shock of my life when I met someone and they were ashamed to be Māori, or they were, if they were non-Māori, they were dogging on Māori.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand why, because even the Pākehā or non-Māori I grew up with were very pro-Māori, or they were kind of an ally.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just big shock for me. And since kind of growing up a little and getting out of that bubble, I've seen how small, I'm always learning how small that bubble really is. So they didn't prepare us, like so pro-Māori, but didn't prepare us for when we would meet people who didn't get what we grew up with. But yeah, left high school, tried university, loved learning and went to study psychology, loved the topic, didn't love uni. And so left after a year and a half, and just couldn't justify staying there for that much time, knowing that it's not what I wanted to do. And then eventually started working for my iwi, and yeah, it was like home, and got paid to learn about whakapapa, karakia, how to interpret them to, I guess, find ways to apply it to our lives today.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was perfect for me. And what else?
How did it get to the point where they allow themselves, I guess, to do that, go ahead and interpret it all, so that people could, I guess, resonate with it?
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't, or they aren't ready for it, or they just see it as inferior to Western mainstream forms of health and wellness. But yeah, the organisation is a sports trust, health promotion set up where we would do programs and events to try and improve the health and wellness of Te Arawa. And there's all those questions like, like what does being Māori mean, or how to identify with that, but when you kind of dial it down to your iwi, so what does being Te Arawa mean, or what does being healthy as Te Arawa mean? And so some of the programs would be based off moteatea, of the chants, and they'd visit the places in that moteatea, which were usually up maunga, like really a mission to get to, like, and then talk about what our tupuna did there, and they'd connect to marae that they never even knew they belonged to. And so you're just building this emotional, spiritual, mental, physical bubble, or I guess experience for people. And that's one of the ways, like, we believe that we could improve our people as Te Arawa, compared to going to a gym and just kind of lifting some weights that you have no connection to.
That's amazing. And that's something you touched on a fair bit at your event on Friday night, was the knowledge and the wisdom that our ancestors had even thousands of years ago. I think that one of the lines in your book is about, maybe the next book should be about that. And I agree. And I think that my ancestors did this thousands of years ago. I think that's a pretty good title.
Yeah. And there's just so amazing. And I was talking with a friend of mine because I just had been learning a little bit about quantum physics.
Nice.
A little bit. And then just looking at karakia, and it's pretty much like it's quite similar, and how quantum physics is a new science. And I was just blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, they were so intelligent, like just so onto it. And I told him, and he was like, yeah, like you should know that already. But isn't it sad how surprised we are at their genius, which is so true. But trying to unlearn and undo a couple hundred years of colonization.
And that's something, especially being here in the First Nations people here, the Aboriginal people here, they talk about during colonization they were forced out of having those circles where the elders would sit down with the kids and teach them what it was to be a man or a woman while grounding at the same time. Was it similar with the Māori culture?
Yeah.
Wow. Just want to take a quick second to give you a word from our sponsors. Hopefully I'm wearing the same clothes I was back in that interview, but don't worry about it. We've got Made It Nutrition, that is plant-based supplements. They're all about the holistic lifestyle. They're all about the mind, body and spirit, and they're doing that through their high intensity bodyweight workouts as well as those plant-based supplements. Number 2 is CrossFit Longhaul, the Good Times gym out in Maddington. Now what they do is they offer personal training. They obviously offer CrossFit group training, and they will tailor your nutrition plan to help you achieve your goals. And the reason that I've partnered with CrossFit Longhaul out there in Maddington is because I'm a friend of the owner. I know her, and she's all about that holistic approach as well, combining and intertwining the physical and the mental. So you'll be in good hands there. CrossFit Longhaul out in Maddington. Ciao. Back to your story. So you start working for your iwi. Mm-hmm. You love it. It's home. Walk us through it from there.
Oh yeah. And probably one other thing is the guy in charge is really staunch in his vision of how he wants to do things, and he has a really good way of convincing people to buy into his vision. But without him, I don't know if it would be that way. But yeah, working there, also in the same year, I made it into the development squad for New Zealand Sevens and the Black Ferns wider training squad. So life was really good. I was just doing all the things, living my best life. And then I got put into a different role the next year that took a lot out of me because I didn't know how to do it, didn't know how to tell people, I didn't know what I was doing. And a friend pointed out to me, it was just 10 words, like, can you help me? I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, I don't know, I remember reading in a book once, never bother someone for something you can do yourself.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting what we retain and what we don't, because that piece of advice sucks if you're trying to coordinate an event for like 2,000 people. You need to learn how to delegate. And I just didn't know how to ask for help. And we led up to our biggest event of the year. And it was a good night, people enjoyed themselves, but I saw everything that went wrong. So I thought the night was a failure, and because I'd invested so much in it and become attached to it being a good night, it wasn't that. So it was a failure, I was a failure. And it was just catastrophic for me at the time. Wow. Just being, exhausted, and I couldn't train because I wanted to do this event well. So I just wasn't taking care of myself, and cue the implosion, really.
Oh man, was that feeling of, I don't know if shame's the good word, or embarrassment about the way the event went, was that validated externally or was it praise externally?
No, people loved it. And when the night finished, I just broke down crying. And they were like, what are you doing? It was a good night. Yeah, things didn't go well, but there's always like something.
Yeah.
But I just saw and focused on all of those negative things that really like didn't matter, really. But such is the beauty of hindsight.
Knowing that you put something on that people liked, did you, looking back now, you said hindsight's 2020, it's beautiful. Was there a hint of you didn't deserve that appreciation?
Like I'm very stubborn, and I'll do what I want to do all the time, and if I've decided that something sucks, well, that's kind of the end of that. And so because I'd seen the things and it didn't align to the vision I had, it was just, nah, it doesn't matter what anyone says. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I'm not too sure. Like, I know my dad's stubborn, and then my mum can be too. Like, you know, being a Pākehā woman and knowing what she wanted for us. So definitely, yeah, from my parents, but all throughout my childhood, it was hard to tell me what to do.
You can just keep walking us through the story from there.
Yeah, and so bad event. A few days later, I had rugby training and just being exhausted in every way. Shouldn't have gone to training, but anyway, went in for a tackle, ended up tearing the ligament from the bone in my shoulder, but it was leading up to the Olympics.
Wow.
In 2016, and so I thought I had to play to try and get selected, but because I had half a shoulder, my quality of play went down, and I just played down the injury because I didn't want to not play, because then I might not get selected. But hindsight again, it was the worst thing I could do, because my level of play deteriorated and then ended up getting dropped, and of course didn't get selected either. And that was the other way I used to identify myself, being an athlete or being a rugby player.
Yeah.
I had played sports all throughout my life, basketball, rugby, and had become attached to that too. It's like Hana, the rugby player, Hana, good at her job, and then all of a sudden I was just Hana, dot. Like I said at the start, and that I had never really been that before. Or like I had, but over the years had built up this belief that I needed to have some external thing to validate Hana.
Wow. Well, do you have an understanding of why you needed that external validation? Like, what was missing?
No.
How, being someone in that position, especially with the opportunity to go to something like the Olympics, which is the epitome for most people, and then having that taken away, how were you able to process that? Because that would have been catastrophic. Yeah. For most people, and it's something that you hear of a lot of people never coming back from.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably heard the stories of the uncle who hurt his knee that was supposed to play for the Kiwis.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so after the event and after the injury, I just sat in between, know that I'm more than just a rugby player or good at my job, but not knowing what that is. Just sat in that awkward space for about 6 to 18 months and didn't try to force anything. For some reason I still haven't been able to trace it, but I just knew that I would figure it out. Didn't know where that came from. I was like, oh, this sucks and I don't know how to get out of it now, but I know that I will eventually.
Do you think that goes back to, I think you said in childhood you guys were allowed to do different things and figure out what was the best avenue for you, like in terms of your life?
Yeah.
Do you think it goes back to that?
Yeah, definitely. And then also where I used to work for my iwi, so I ended up leaving the place because I would show up to work and not care if I did anything or not.
Wow.
After the event. And I knew that that wasn't okay, and that the iwi or that role deserved more. So I ended up leaving, but I have always had a trust in the process or in the universe that everything will be all right. And if it's not all right, then it's not the end. So just trusting that my boss, or the conditions at the time, that they wouldn't have put me somewhere I wasn't, where I wasn't safe. And so again, in hindsight, have been able to reflect on it and just know that if it wasn't for those things, if those things never happened, well, I wouldn't be who and what I am today.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have, I guess, developed that kind of awareness that my identity isn't based on external things. Just sucked that it had to be so so hard. Yeah.
Were you, knowing that you were in a position, working in a job that you liked, but you weren't giving your all after that event, were you instilled with accountability to that level growing up? Because that's something that most people couldn't even acknowledge, let alone like take action and cut ties from.
Yeah. Yes. And I've always been I've always internalized deeply. It would take me up to 2 weeks or something to process how I felt about a situation, and I'd share it and people would be like, that was 2 weeks ago. And so I got the impression that I was the only one who thought the way that I did and felt really deeply about things, and was there's that quote, you know too much psychology when you can't get mad at anyone, because you can always try to be empathetic and see things from their point of view. And so I've always been like that. And I guess that's where that kind of comes from.
So you're in that dark place for how long did you say? 18 months?
6 to 18 months until you're never really fully out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the point either. But out of that thing.
So what was that for you? What was the story you were telling yourself?
That I just let everyone down.
Wow.
With the event, it's funny. It's with the event, and then with not being a rugby player, and then in finishing my job, and I was just picking up a few freelance photography gigs because I could do that. But I just thought that I was just being a bum, and that was the worst thing in my mind that I could do.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was just, I guess, always asking that question, or you were a rugby player, that was your whole life, that's what you based it on, and now you don't have it, what are you?
So how do you pull yourself out of that?
Whakapapa. Yeah, so whakapapa is everything, ancestry, genealogy, but also processes, experiences and environments, and how they've contributed to that belief. So there's we could trace it back, as you know, to a point in time where you learnt that and adopted it and invested in it. And knowing how genius our tupuna were, and how many different pieces of information and knowledge they wove into stories, I started to look at those to try and make sense of what I was going through. And one of the first ones I think I picked up was Whiro, atua of misfortune and disease, and just started thinking about him and how I had only read about him as the physical, skin diseases and pollution and that kind of stuff. But I had never come across any kind of writing or stories that spoke of him in a spiritual, mental, that intangible, unseen expression.
Yeah.
But knowing that the physical is an expression of anything non-physical, metaphysical, it's well, maybe this darkness and this space could be me engaging with this tupuna. And he's going to chill with me until I figure it out and process what I need to process. And flipping it that way and seeing that 6 to 18 months as engaging with tupuna, rather than there being something wrong with me or that I shouldn't be feeling the way that I do, it just made it so much more, I guess, manageable and like I would figure it out eventually, and just made it much more likely.
Yeah, because if you look at it in the Western sense or with Western eyes, you're crazy.
Yeah.
You're not normal.
Yeah, and you shouldn't hurt, or you shouldn't feel, I'm not going to say I was depressed because I never got it diagnosed, but that you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
Which really is so detrimental.
Yeah, and if you feel that you shouldn't feel a certain way but you can't help it, there's going to be guilt and shame.
Yeah, and then you don't know how to process it, and it's just a mess.
That's actually one of the stories that I was going to mention later. That's one of the ones that I really liked. And I think, was it in the same chapter you speak about negative space?
Probably. I try not to look at the book. But negative space. So the book is kind of like a clearing out all of that dead weight, really, all those beliefs and thoughts and ideas that don't benefit us anymore, or that have resulted in our lives being the way they are, and how people just don't want to experience anything negative, or when it does happen, like for me, it was so catastrophic. But had that never happened, I wouldn't be here today, wouldn't have had the books, my life would look totally different. And I know that I'm better for it, for going through that and coming out, because it just develops character and your perspective and understanding.
Yep.
I wouldn't know myself to the level that I do. Like, I'm sure there's still things I need to learn, but no way would I learn that if I didn't go through the things that I have. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So I guess if you're comfortable just walking us through your story from there, you've started reading more and more, understanding more about your whakapapa and how that relates to what you're going through.
Yeah, and so about 8 months after the injury, my dad passed away, and he was like my best friend, and him and I are very similar, and we used to have a joke that I was his daughter and my brothers were my mother's sons. But really, like, just loved him, and he left me when I needed him most. So I was kind of already feeling vulnerable and lost, and then to not have someone like to have my back, physically anyway, it was really hard. And miss him. But in amongst all that, I had met my partner, and he was unhappy with his life in New Zealand, and he had a really good friend over here in Perth, and sold him the dream. And so he asked me if I'd move over to Perth with him, and it was like, yeah. And I can make big decisions, like, I'm really instinctive, and it just felt right, that it would be good for me, and so I agreed. And then we were putting that together, and then Dad passed away, and so it kind of intensified that want to get out of New Zealand, because it was just so much hurt, I guess. And then came here, and the physical isolation, because not knowing where Perth was, how far away it was from anything, was exactly what I needed, to just be a mess, to pull those beliefs and ideas and values apart, and try and figure out how I got to where I was, and clear out what didn't benefit me anymore, and start putting something more, just something true for me together.
So how did you go about that initially when you moved here?
Cried a lot, and my partner just didn't know how to be there. So it was quite it was hard on both of us, and we were only fresh into our relationship. And then parent passes away, moved to a new place. So it was really hard. Cried a lot, and I would go out to the beach, lucky to live near the beach, and just try and get it out some way. And then I started writing again, and all throughout childhood I'd have a diary, So I've always written, but then I go in and out of it, and then just started to write just what I was feeling, different interpretations or applications of pūrākau to it, and expressing it through the writing just really helped me to give order to the ideas, because they just seem like this. Or it's like the analogy I like is when everyone's had a big feed, they've come over to your house and then the dishes are just all over the place.
Yeah.
Looks terrible, but then if you like rinse them or you stack them, it becomes a little more manageable. And so through the writing, like that's what I was doing to my thoughts and my mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Throughout that process, because I think a lot of people go through journaling, and through journaling, putting it down on paper and writing, they realise that most of the thoughts that they're having aren't actually tangible. They don't have weight at all. Was it the same for you?
Yes. Yeah, and it's it's so funny. Like sometimes I try to watch my thoughts and just laugh at how ridiculous like some of them are. And especially I went through a phase, it's like this exercise where you say all the thoughts that come into your head as you have them, and they just don't make sense and they're not connected to anything, and you just, because when they're in your head, they could be like as big or as little as you want. But then when you actually get them out of there on paper or however, like, oh, actually, yeah, over half of these like just are redundant, and yeah.
How did you give yourself permission to cry like that? Is that something you've always done? Oh, actually, it is.
Yes,
I remember you saying.
Yeah, so always been a crier. As a kid, I learned a really cool hack. If I didn't want to talk about anything, or if I thought I would get in trouble, I would just cry. But as a kid, like I could get away with things and by crying. But as I grew older, I never snapped out of it. I never grew out of it. And so we'd get to these kind of conversations, or would have to resolve an issue, and everyone would speak their part, and then it would get to me and I would just cry. Like I had the words in my mind, but I couldn't, like it was just disconnected with something coming out of my mouth, and instead that come out of my eyes. And people would get annoyed because they'd be like, oh, usually goes like big surprise. And then I'd get annoyed because I'd still feel misunderstood, and I would blame them. It's like, oh, they're not taking the time to understand me. And then until I realised, well, Hana, you're not really giving them any chance to understand you if you just cry.
Yeah.
But I had become, I guess, attached to being a crier and didn't want to be that anymore. And so I would look on Google, like, how not to cry. And there was like different things, like funny ears. But it was just really trying to understand when I get butterflies or really flustered. It's like, okay, cool. Are you safe? I feel like, yes, okay, I'm safe. I say, sweet. So it's just like, yeah, it's okay to feel that way. But just breathe, remember to breathe and talk. And it's taken time. But that's not my, I guess that kind of crying was a defense mechanism, I think.
Yeah.
But like crying like I have been today, it's never been a negative thing.
Okay, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So were you allowed to express yourself like that in, I guess, emotional situations growing up?
Maybe, but because of that hack,
Oh, yeah.
like I don't know if they were like the same cause or if they were the same experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got to the part where you're now writing and you're making the distinction between the thoughts that are real and the thoughts that aren't, the thoughts that have weight. One of the bits that I found interesting, and it's something that I've been through with my relationship as well, is being that person who's not in the best space, who does cry, who does suppress what it is that they're going through. That was hard for me in my relationship, and the way forward for us was me writing what I was thinking down and then giving it to my partner. How did you and your partner attack that?
Yeah, quite similarly. And one of the initial reasons for the blog So had been doing freelance photography back home, thought I'd do the same here. Didn't know anyone, nobody knew me, so I took to Google again, how to get new clients, and the different articles came back with writing a blog. And I decided I would write about what I knew, so how to apply ancestral knowledge to my life to make sense of it. And a lot of the, I guess, issues or things I wanted my partner to know, I would write in the blog. But then also, like, I'd just write letters, or just sharing things that I maybe couldn't at the time because I would just cry. But yeah, the blog was definitely used once or twice to try and share my perspective on something.
Yep. Yeah. How did you two, if you're comfortable talking about it, work through, if there was any, this feeling of like being responsible for how you felt or playing a role in it? Because that's what my partner felt. She felt like, oh, I'm here as support, but obviously I'm not doing a good job because you still feel like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's really tricky for both of us. It was like a pressure cooker, really, like with all those different things going on for both of us. And then him not liking his life back in New Zealand and wanting to get success, get the money and the truck and stuff, and putting pressure on himself, and then still figuring each other out in our relationship, let alone figuring out ourselves individually. It's been a long road to get to here, where we can speak openly and not worry about if the other person what they might think.
Yeah.
Whereas in the earlier days, we would have to censor what we really felt, not knowing if they could handle it or how they might respond. And yeah, because there were a few times when like either of us would share and the other one would just not know how to be there or how to support.
Yeah. And I feel, especially from my relationship, the first time I wrote something in my journal and I was like, here babe, like that's what I'm thinking, she just shut down completely. She just shut down and there was nothing. I was just like, oh man, I've just fucked her up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, I won't ever do that again.
Yeah.
But that's just because she was worried and like she felt that she couldn't help me. So defense for her was to just shut off.
Yeah.
And protect herself.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful to hear that you guys are in this space where you're content and comfortable enough to share.
Yeah. And still have to remind each other of that, because like things pile up eventually and accumulatively. But yeah, now our communication is so much better. And when we first got together, like I would still cry and he'd be like, why are you crying? Like, I don't know, but I want to talk about that thing. And so I was like, oh, we had to try different things to try and communicate, because at the time I couldn't. And then different perspectives on different things as well. The norm for me wasn't the same normal for him.
Yeah.
And so realizing that and trying to figure out a new normal for both of us, still working on that. But just that awareness that we are different and being, I guess, empathetic in that.
That plays a huge role.
Yes.
So what happens after you get to the point where you're now writing this blog?
Yeah, writing the blog was initially to try and attract new clients for the photography, but didn't really know many people, and I had to take photos of something and would end up taking photos of myself. And I liked it. I liked being in front of the camera, but it had always been a negative thing.
Yep.
Growing up, they're so vain, they love themselves. And I didn't want to be that. And so it took me a while to actually accept, like, well, you've accepted all these other parts of you that have resulted in who and what you are today. This is part of you too. and you're trying to use it for good and spread this awareness about how amazing our tupuna are and then how people can apply the knowledge to today, maybe try owning it. And so I did, and because I accepted I like being in front of the camera, I started producing the videos, vlogging, and I just started becoming self-aware through whakapapa and wanted to express that in as many different ways as possible. And after the vlogging, the book came in, and radio, different opportunities to speak and present, and
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is really cool. How, knowing that you're someone who didn't want to be that vain person, who always wanted to be in front of the camera, and then now knowing what you're doing, connecting people back to this sort of stuff, especially like the Māori people, how have you been able to relinquish that, I guess, fear of judgment, of people thinking it's ego or anything like that?
Yeah, it's always a work in progress, but the karakia I did for our event on Friday is what one of my tupuna said to his people before they left Hawaii to go to New Zealand. And there's a few themes in it, but in one he says, go to this new land and improve yourself, become the best version of yourself you can be, and that's your contribution back to your people. Like, figure out your gifts and serve your people. And then another line is to deafen your mind and your ears to things that are insignificant, for they will surely cause your demise. And with quantum physics and stuff again, reciting that karakia like every morning or even a few times a day at times, it just reinforced that belief that people will think whatever they're going to think, and that's a them issue. That's whatever they've got going on, and I try not to offend people or be disrespectful with what I share. And so I know that it's genuine, what I do, and it's for the greater good in some way. And if someone wants to interpret that as something narcissistic or whatever, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a moment where you've put a piece of content out that you thought was for the greater good, and you thought, oh shit, maybe ulterior motives here? I thought that you were going to ask something different.
So I was like, no. Just thinking, no, I don't think so. But there have been cases where because I'm naturally overconfident or self-assured, so I back myself, and like I know any decision I make is the right decision. Either I win or I learn. There's a lot of learning. And so sometimes I put content out confident that it's like quality and it's good, and I've been called out for it, which has been awesome because I've learned so much about how I could do it better, but also how far-reaching the content can get.
I think that's what I wanted to ask, but didn't ask it the right way.
Yeah. So the most recent one is pretty sure you've heard of the whakatauaki, hea te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What's the most important thing in this world? It is people, it is people, it is people. And I didn't know the context of that story, of that whakatauaki, and I disagree with that on a surface level. Like, I don't think people are the most important thing in this world, and that belief has got the world into the state that it's in today.
Yeah.
And we know that we're not the most important thing because whakapapa tells us we're the last almost in the evolution of life. And so I wrote that, and I wrote how I disagreed and just being ignorant to where that came from and the context that it was said.
Okay.
And so people proceeded to comment and message me, and they shared, some nicer than others. They shared the history and how a kuia from the far north, meeting aroto, there was a lot of warfare and infighting, and the children, the people and the land were suffering as a result. And so she said that in an attempt to end and cease the fighting, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And really at its core, one interpretation and what people told me is like life is more important. Like that's the most important thing in this world. And so very surface level translation and interpretation that tangata is just people, like humans.
Yeah.
And so huge learning for me. And so I went to apologise to all the people for sharing and correcting me, and then made a video to apologise because, you know, if I'm going to share all of me on there, then I need to share the stuff that, like that negative, those negative experiences that really have made me better for. Yeah, I'm better for it, for putting it out there, getting corrected, making the apology. And a few people reached out that they didn't know the backstory to it either. And so it was this huge learning for everyone. And yeah, really beautiful, and like still remember her name. I think I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Yeah, because it's part of the whakapapa of the process of the way I think now.
Yeah.
And so being a lot more diligent about how I research and how I share and how I explain different things.
That's one of the, I guess, the most profound things about being a leader in this space is if you put yourself out there in a negative light, in a way that shows that you're human, people just relate to you a whole lot more. And especially if you're exposing your mistakes, it limits the amount that other people can jump on the bandwagon and attack you for those mistakes as well.
Yeah.
How did you give yourself permission to do that apology? Was that something you needed to work through at all? Or was that instinctive? Okay.
No. And it's so funny because I think I received more messages for the apology than for the initial blog post. And people saying things like, "Oh, you're so brave for doing that." And I was like, what? If you make a mistake or you do something wrong and doesn't matter what your intentions are, but you like offend people, which I did, you know, being empathetic, I could see that. And just knowing, like, I always try to share as much of my truth as I can online.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like shit and I don't want to share that because I don't want to send negative energy out there. But as much of it as I can. And it was, I guess the struggle really was, how am I going to apologise? Because I knew I had to, but I was just, okay, well, what am I going to say? So I had to rehearse it a few times to make sure that I hit all the points. But no, it was always going to happen. And I've made apologies in other videos and other posts.
That's awesome.
And it's,
I think the powerful thing about that is it's an apology through empathy for how you made someone else feel rather than an apology to help your brand.
Yeah, no. And it's fun, like I put up the questions feature sometimes on Insta. People, one time this guy was like, "Oh, what would you be doing if you didn't have social media?" I was like, the same thing. I just wouldn't be able to post it anyway. Because it's a lifestyle blog, so it's different things that I do or experience and learn and that I share.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
One thing I want to ask about your story is, knowing all the work that you've done with the books and the blog, vlogging and the speaking that you've done, has that helped you process losing your dad at all?
Yes. Yeah, so really is the writing, and it's like trying to answer this as succinctly as possible. But him and my mum were teachers, and they went overseas with my younger brother to teach at an international school.
Yeah.
And he got sick over there, and I went over from New Zealand to visit him, and I was there for about 2 weeks, And on the last day I went to visit him. It's like, so I'm going home tomorrow, but I'll see you when you come back, when you get better. And then early the next morning I left, and I was flying from Kuwait to Abu Dhabi to Perth, because Cass had moved over. And I got a call while I was in Abu Dhabi that he passed away. And I guess the whole circumstances of being all the way over there alone, so far away from anyone, it's like all of those different things compounded, and then the thoughts like, oh, what if I never said I was leaving? Had to, I guess, unpack all of that, and how all of those led to me feeling abandoned and angry at him, or angry at life, for how things had turned out. So feeling all of that and not trying to shut it out, like, it was hard, but in doing so, have been able to process it, like, I think a lot better than if I tried to shut it out.
Is that a mixture of like allowing yourself to feel it and then expressing it through your writing? Yeah, and then just like things that I'd grown up with, that, you know, death's a part of life as well. Like, everything dies, everyone dies eventually, or physically anyway. And there's a thought that, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and that's part of being in this physical dimension, I guess, is that people aren't always here forever, and that's okay. Is that something you've read about or studied? Yeah,
I think it was in one of the books that I've read, like, definitely not my own. Yeah.
I don't know if I heard this right, and I don't want to be disrespectful at all, but was there guilt for, like, losing your dad and not being there?
Yeah.
Have you forgiven yourself for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
So I think, Dad passed away end of May 3 years ago, and I got to, I think, a few months after, and I wrote about him and the whole different thoughts. So I realized, like, this isn't the defense mechanism cry, it's the, like, other cry. But I guess in being able to express what it was like for me being at the airport, finding out, and even sharing some of those thoughts, like, what if I never told him that I was leaving? Would he still have, fought? And being able to share that, and for close friends and whānau and even strangers to read it and reach out, and just talk about it, because I don't think I had shared that experience with people, or with too many people, so not many people knew.
Wow.
And so in sharing it on the blog, again, kind of gave context for some people to see from my perspective. Yeah.
That's something that a lot of people don't come back from, is guilt that they don't deserve to hold.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Moving on, ask a couple quick questions and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Knowing everything that you've been through and what you're doing now, you're very much a leader in the space, whether you want to admit that or not. You are a leader in the space, you're making a positive impact, and you're positively changing people's lives. What would you say the quality of your life is like now?
Like the quality how?
Just in general. What's the quality of your life like in your eyes?
I still don't know how to answer that, but I love it.
That's all you need to answer.
Yeah, like, there's some really cool things that I get to do, like people I get to meet, opportunities, and then there's also stuff that sucks that I'm just trying to figure out or trying to get out of my life. But I think I've said it in previous posts, like it's a mess, but it's mine. And like, I love it.
That's cool.
And I've worked on myself to create a life that is like mine.
Yeah.
You know, came over to Perth, like, just for the weekend, just like to see Cass, but just because I could, and like on this book tour and other different opportunities that I've been able to have, and it causes some stress and sometimes have comms breakdowns with my whānau, with my mum or with Cass, with myself even, but I love it. Yeah.
That's powerful. And if you take on, I guess, that perspective, and saying that mess is your mess, essentially you're taking responsibility. When you take responsibility, you don't leave your life in someone else's hands for people to determine the way that you live it.
Yes. And
which is something that you talk about in the book as well.
Yeah, and have always, like I think I said, I was always stubborn, and people, I think those closest to me, they know, like, they can offer advice, but if I'm going to do something like this, what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Even if I fail, like, really I'll just learn how not to do it, hopefully. But yeah, so very just, I have my back in a way.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What are you most grateful for right now?
So I really don't want to say something generic and just...
It's all right.
Yeah. But just, to be alive, really. Like, my life could be so many different ways, really. But, was it 1 in 400 trillion?
Yep.
Yeah, the possibility that I am who I am with my parents and the different, like, Māori. So actually really grateful for whakapapa, and that I've been taught the value of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Last question. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard somewhere where you know thousands of people would see it every day, what would that message be? Let's assume this is back home.
Yeah. Probably that quote I shared the other night. We don't directly empower people, but we create an environment where they can empower themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. To wrap up, I want to acknowledge you again for driving all the way from Inaloo, from flying all the way from New Zealand, but for most of all, taking all of that pain, turning it to purpose, with the whakapapa effect, with your book, with your speaking, everything else that you do to positively impact, empower and change lives. Super grateful.
Thank you.
Yes.